Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. We are live here on Monday night, 6 o'clock, each and every Monday during the football season. Fall camp underway here, a couple weeks in, 19 days until Michigan kicks off the year. I'm Clayton Sayfie, alongside a special guest, Isaiah Hull. My regular co-hosts have abandoned me today, so I have to get our main man, Isaiah Hull from WolverinesWire.com, also the host of the Locked On Wolverines podcast, does a great job, is hosting this year
also
in the pocket. Go ahead.
Host of the Monday GP podcast.
Oh, true. He's a big F1 guy now. I'm not even going to out you for not being an F1 fan that long, but he's covering F1, but he's also the host of the In the Pocket podcast with former Michigan quarterback and staff member Jack Tuttle.
It's just Locked On Wolverines. We just gave it a special name. It's still Locked On Wolverines. It's just
sure. Find him over there. But I wanted to plug that as well. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that because you and Jack had an episode already. But it is Isaiah Hull. Most people know him. If you're excited to get into it here, if you're excited for Michigan's football season, hit the like button on the video. Also subscribe to our channel. Heck, if you're pumped to see number 19 in 19 days, that'd be Bryce Underwood and potentially Rod Moore, who switched back to 19. Hit that thumbs up button. You can also head to the Wolverine.com. We got all your Michigan coverage using the promo code UM1. That will get you 2 months of premium access for just $1. Michigan had their first scrimmage of fall camp on Saturday. I want to talk a little bit about what we've heard about that, and then we'll get to your question. So for anyone out there, leave a question in the live YouTube chat here. We have some questions from our message board over at thewolverine.com as well. If you want to leave a super chat, that will get you to the front of the line. So we'll get to all of your questions. Isaiah has a chicken on the grill. It's been a running joke on this show. If you have a quiche in the oven, as Chris Ballas would say, it means you kind of want to wrap up the pod. He legitimately does have a chicken on the grill, though. So that's the first chicken on the grill we've had on the show. But Isaiah, is this true? You're making some chicken tonight?
No, I made it up as a way to get out of here early.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. No, there's a chicken on the smoker. I even put it on. The smoker wasn't even fully heated up, but I put it on just so that I could come on here because it's been a whirlwind of a day.
I love it. Well, we appreciate it. And let's get right into it. Again, Michigan holds their first scrimmage of fall camp on Saturday. Let's start with the quarterbacks. To no one's surprise, freshman Bryce Underwood was running with the ones out there. To a little bit of my surprise, Jaden Davis in the twos, Jake Garcia with the threes. Mikey Keene, as TJ Metcalf, Michigan's junior DB, said last week, they haven't really faced him in fall camp. He's been doing some things, but not in team drills. It seemed like he was dressed, but didn't go through the scrimmage on Saturday. And it was mostly situational, moving around different situations. But it's August 11th now. That scrimmage was August 9th. Do you have concern about the depth at quarterback at this point, Isaiah, with the fact that Mikey Keene's maybe not 100% yet going through everything?
Personally, not. I mean, only slightly, right? Like that's pretty clear why they brought in Jake Garcia now, right? And it's not an ideal situation. And they're talking about Jaden Davis, like he's really improved. I've heard kind of the same thing. This isn't the same guy that was a true freshman last year. I wouldn't go so far as say like bubble wrap Bryce, but it's not as optimal a situation as it looked a little while ago. Now, Ron Bellamy either told us the truth today or lied straight to our faces. And basically is like, oh, Mikey Keene's doing all kinds of stuff, right? Like, okay. Right? Like
you're at a tough spot when you're an assistant coach and you get asked that question.
Yeah, that's very true. But like, we'll find out tomorrow, right? Like, I'm sure Sherrone Moore will set the record straight, or he'll be Fort Schembechler. Who knows? Might just be like, how's Mikey Keene's health? All the guys are healthy. All of them look great. All of them are doing okay. Great. I cannot wait to write that up. But like I am a little concerned because he hasn't really been going, but like at the same time, even with it's a new system, but he's got familiarity with Chip Lindsey already, right? He had a year with him at UCF. He's been around college football almost as long as Jack Tuttle. He's got another decade to get there, but he's still, he's on his way. So like I don't know that he needs it as much as Bryce. Like I think like you can kind of like if they feel like he can be healthy, and I don't know if they feel that or not. But then like does he really need to get all the reps and all of that kind of stuff? I don't know that that's necessarily the deal. Now like yeah, you want to get some rapport. I kind of sounds like with the individual stuff like he's able to get that. So that's good news. That's a good sign. But it does lessen the kind of room for error, I think. Like maybe you don't run Bryce as much as you might have otherwise because like what happens beyond that, like that might be it. And I think we've seen quarterback durability type of stuff. I kind of was already of the mind of like Bryce doesn't need to throw for like 3,500 yards for it to be a successful season. I think he'll have a better season than a lot of people are estimating. I think it'll be higher than like 2,500, but like he just needs to be Cade McNamara in 2021, right? So you can kind of put him in bubble wrap just by virtue of like, hey, we can just run the type of stuff that isn't going to get him killed as long as everyone does their job. Obviously, he has the escapability that the quarterbacks last year did not. So, like, I guess like the question is his pocket awareness? It's not as deep of a room at this moment, but like certainly the ceiling is just so much higher and the floor is a lot higher. And, like that's where it's like, can Jake Garcia at least can he be Cade McNamara 2021? Despite how things have gone for him so far? I mean, maybe. I wouldn't write that off,
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting point. David Ross in the chat says, okay, depth at quarterback is overrated mostly. I don't think Jake Garcia is going to move the needle if he's a starter. Likely the season is in a bad place if Bryce gets hurt. I agree and disagree. One, when the starter goes down for the whole season, you're kind of screwed. But let's say Bryce Underwood misses a game or a quarter or a series, and you have to keep things afloat. You have to keep a 3-point lead or a 10-point lead, or he has to lead a drive to, have them come back and win a game. Then it raises your entire ceiling. If that's the difference between 9 and 10 wins, it could be the difference between making the playoff and not making the playoff. So you hope it doesn't get to that point. It's always a weird thing talking about backup quarterback because you hope you never really have to see that guy. But the reality is sometimes you do. Last year, they had some weird stuff with health. They've had it in the past. They had it 2015. Rudock, you have Wilton Spate comes in, wins them a game against Minnesota in part. Had to come in the Ohio State game when Rudock got hurt as well. There are plenty of examples. 2017, Brandon Peters and, a lot of those guys cycling through. O'Korn, Spate got hurt earlier in the year. So, yeah, it's one of those things that is really important, but sometimes doesn't even come into play and matter. But
no, here's the other part.
Go ahead.
Like, the schedule might be amenable to being able to deal with like Jake Garcia coming in, right? Last year they had how many college football playoff teams on the schedule? This year they've got one. We can go over the schedule later, but like people, but I mean, I'm saying one from last year.
Oh yes, yes.
Like that's it. They have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten in terms of opponent win percentage from last year. So, like, I know people are like nationally are like, oh man, Oklahoma's an auto loss. It's like, yeah, it's how I usually look at a 6 and 7 team. So, I think that can play a part, right? Like, if Bryce gets hurt and they're playing USC, which might have a good defense but hasn't had it, like that's different than like a Washington team that has a good defense and a quarterback. Right. Like that's, does he get hurt against Northwestern? Then yeah, Jake Garcia is probably going to be fine. Right. There's 6 games on that schedule, at least, that if you have to run the backup, you're going to be okay. And there's probably 4, maybe 5 where it's like, depends on if he gets hurt, when does he get hurt in the game? Right.
And a little off topic, AP poll comes out today. Makes me feel even better about Michigan's schedule. There are, 6 Big Ten teams that made it? Michigan does not play Oregon. They don't play Penn State. They don't play Indiana. They don't play Illinois. They don't play 4 of those teams. They play one of them, Ohio State. Oklahoma came in, I think, around 18 or something like that. So you will play
18.
them in the non-conference. But it looks pretty favorable. And you kind of got screwed on schedule last year. Part of it was your own doing, scheduling Texas a decade earlier. But I think it evened out here a little bit in a year when you might need a little bit of a break because you have a young quarterback, you got a young team. So those are the quarterbacks. Bryce Underwood with the ones, commanding things well. Feels like he has the team kind of behind him, just the way that the teammates are talking about him and the fact that they're giving him those reps. The second thing I heard, defense won the day. That's not surprising. The offense looked improved, but a work in progress. Also not surprising. But something that I think you've also heard quite a bit of throughout the offseason is Donovan McCully appears to be the real deal, was the quote that we got. And that's nice to hear that, there's going to be a go-to target for Bryce Underwood. Now, how good I keep talking about this. How good is the real deal? How good is your number one receiver? Is he just, really good compared to the rest of the guys, or is he really good nationally or in the Big Ten? That's the huge question when it comes to Donovan McCully. How consistent can he be? But certainly you'd much rather hear that than not hear it.
Yeah, I heard that they have a real good rapport, in particular, that Bryce and McCully, and supposedly there was like a really good kind of back shoulder, over the shoulder type of connection that they had that was ended up being a touchdown and ended up kind of wowing the people who were there. So like, I think that's, maybe a sign. I think you look at it and it's just like, he's one of two guys on this team, neither of whom were around last year, that have like actual production. And so that tells me that regardless, like he's going to be, better than what they've had. And heck, Samaj, Fred Moore, like those guys can get better. You expect receivers to kind of really start to come on in either year 2 or year 3. So, this would be kind of the moment, but it's kind of like I hearken back to, like, I asked Lamar Morgan today. This, you were there, you were present. I asked him about the receivers, and he was like, it's really not about the receivers. It's about having a quarterback that can get it to him. I think that's kind of what matters the most. Now, I mean, I agree with him because they didn't have that really. So we kind of don't know. Like, I don't think at times last year, it didn't feel like the receivers did them any favors, but Jack would probably be the first to tell you on that. In that Illinois game, the receivers were running wild, but he couldn't get the ball to them. Like, they were running open all game. And so, like, that's the thing. And then the spring game is kind of a hard, with split squad, it's hard to really kind of figure out, like, what's what. He threw 14 times to Shannon Goodwin, who they just keep raving about, but we haven't seen it. So, I think they do have something in McCully. Just the way they talk about him, he earned the number one. This wasn't just like Kakoa Crawford, get it, I want number one. Okay, here you go. Congratulations, type of thing. I think he earned it. And because he talked about that. He's like, I had to earn it. I didn't want to just be given it. I wanted to earn it. And you saw the one play he had, and then you hear from Ron Bellamy today that he's the most like physically aggressive receiver when it comes to blocking and all of that. I think that's all extremely positive. And like I said, he's one of two guys that has actual experience, actual stats. We're not playing off of potential as much as we're playing off of the idea, can you miss a year of football and come back and at least do what you did and get 700 yards? If you can, then they'll be in a great spot.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get those opportunities. I feel like just the way he's being talked about, what you hear about him, he's separated himself from probably the rest of the pack, especially on the outside. And that guy's going to get his opportunities, whether it's Cornelius Johnson type productivity or, Roman Wilson, probably a rung or two above that. And then, there's that next level, that 1,000-yard receiver that Michigan hasn't had since 2013, Jeremy Gallon. And Ron Bellamy, he knew that right off the bat today when someone brought it up. And he said that that's something that comes up in the room. They want to get there. Donovan McCully said last week that he wants 1,000 yards and at least 10 touchdowns. And it's something that's motivating him. And like you said, and Bellamy said it today, he wanted to come and improve himself. He wanted to prove he was physical. He wanted to prove he was reliable. And it seems like he's kind of done that. So good to hear there. Running backs look solid. One person in attendance said they should be at least what the running backs were last year. I've said all offseason, I think this duo of Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall will be better. That's my prediction. We don't know yet. will be better than the duo of Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards last season. Now, Kalel Mullings almost single-handedly won some games, so and maybe those performances won't be replicated. Maybe they won't need to be replicated. Hopefully you have some more help from the pass game and the rest of the team. You know, he single-handedly in Donovan, that duo against USC, but it was against Minnesota, it was Kalel. Against Arkansas State, they couldn't tackle him. So, and there were other moments as well. You did an article, I believe yesterday or over the weekend, on position groups that you think could be better than last season. Did you have running backs as one of them that you think will be improved?
Yeah, I think so. And it's no offense to my guy, the Don, who I shared text with yesterday.
He played well over the weekend. Love to see
that. That's why I shared. I had to, give him a attaboy. And, it's no offense to him or Kalel. Like, Kalel did create some, but not in the way that you think of, like, when you think of, like, a running back creating their own, like, ability, kind of, like, creating their own plays. You tend to think more of like a Blake Corum type, right? Like they had the smallest hole and found a way through it and then did some work. Kalel kind of did more Superman work in a lot of ways. Like you think of the USC, the big run there. You think about Ohio State, bouncing it outside, that type of thing. I mean, that was good, but you don't want to rely on that, and there's a reason why there just were so many games like second half. They essentially, like USC, Minnesota, could do nothing in the second half. I think that both of these guys, and it's a little bit easier to say with Justice because you've kind of seen a little bit more of it last year at Alabama, and a little bit, you saw it in the spring game too. Then Jordan's had one really good game against an incredible opponent, so like that, you look at that and say that theoretically you should extrapolate. Especially because they're going to face maybe one team all year that's as good as Alabama was last year, especially up front. And that might be, I think Alabama might still be a better front than what they see at any point in time this year, period. So like you look at Jordan and say like he had the thinnest and smallest of holes and made something work. Justice Haynes that's kind of like his go-to. He doesn't need a lot of room. So with that, I feel like, and then you combine it with having like something of a functional pass game. Doesn't need to be like I've been saying for a month or so. Like it doesn't need to be like high flying. It just needs to be functional. That should open up opportunities. And that's the kind of the big worry is, can teams crowd the line like they did in 2022 and 2023? Because like Bryce is even though like there's some who have told me he's essentially JJ second year capability and ability and all of that. We haven't seen it, so I don't know. And JJ was able to punish teams for doing that. And I think that having two guys that can find have that vision, have that ability to kind of create something that isn't like, man, everything broke down and then they did it like Kalel. I think that's going to really pay dividends. And I had heard just like Justice has just been absolutely mauling in fall camp off of just, I always like to qualify my sources. This wasn't a one-to-one, right? This was like, I know a guy who knew a guy type of scenario. So take it for what it's worth. But,
sure.
I think that like both of them have a lot of capability. They complement each other well in terms of like, it doesn't seem like either have a lot of weaknesses. They can both kind of do the same thing, but I think it's going to be interesting because like you would rather have what they can do over like say like Blake Corum 2021, where it was like just speed. They both have been kind of mentioned as being kind of like 2022 Blake pre-injury. So we'll see.
They're both complete backs, and Blake probably didn't become that until 22, and then he became as complete of a back as you could. But yeah, like Hassan and Blake were so different in 21 that it worked. This feels like you're going to have essentially a very similar style back on the field at all times. And Marshall maybe a little more physical. I mean, some of the runs and broken tackles he had against Alabama were incredible. We haven't mentioned defense, and part of the reason why one
and I don't want to.
You hate the defense,
yeah, I hate the defense. Kidding.
One observer who was there says they look well versed, look like they know their scheme and assignment. And this quote that I found funny and probably something that's really encouraging. I didn't hear too much yelling going on that side of the ball. And again, we did actually mention defense earlier because we said they won the day, which again is not a huge surprise. Defenses are typically ahead of offenses at this time of year. And especially when you have what could be an elite defense coming back against an offense implementing a new system under new coordinator Chip Lindsey. But I didn't hear too much yelling going on that side of the ball. I take that as a huge positive. Part of the reason is I bet on August 9th, 2024, there was a little bit more stopping play, maybe not yelling because they were still learning, right? They were getting used to playing under Wink Martindale. Now it's the entire defensive staff back, a lot of the same players, some of whom were thrown into much bigger roles than they were used to last season. But now a lot of those guys are back for year 2 of that. We've seen how that can work out for players. A lot to replace, but it feels like this defense has that continuity. They're ready to go and are going to be much better earlier in the season than they were last year. Maybe the peak isn't as high, the peak being Ohio State, Alabama, and it could be, but I think early in the year they're going to be ready, which gives them a hell of a shot to go down to Oklahoma and win.
Yeah, I think the thing, like, so you mentioned my stock up, stock down article. I had the defensive tackles as even as last year. And I people that Michigan fans, like I expected like Ohio State fans types, right? Because they love my work, they love reading it, they love everything about it.
8 clicks.
Yeah, and they like taking like nice little clips out of context. They love it. But like I had Michigan fans that were like, I agreed with everything but that. Like, how can you say that losing Mason and Kenneth? I kind of liken it to, and I think that they're going to be better off than this. But like you think about the defensive line going from 21 to 22, and I'm talking the whole of the defensive line, right? People are like, well, the pass rush isn't going to be as good with David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson gone. But like, yeah, they didn't get nearly as many sacks, but like the defensive line was just as suffocating in large part because they had a deeper rotation and a deeper bench than they had the year before. So I think like defensively, that's like why I think like the defensive line is going to be able to dominate. Like, let me add, like I had multiple people tell me, and one of them, again, to qualify it, unlike what I just did, where it was like a guy who knows a guy, like this is a guy who everyone knows, told me like he thinks that they think it's going to be the best front seven in the country. And I think like when you hear that and understand like what they've been talking about all offseason of like, we got 6 starters in the interior, 6. Last year, like there were times, I just said this on my show, there were times last year that, yeah, Mason and Kenneth weren't out there and you were kind of like scratching your head. You're like, this is a big play and you absolutely need those guys out there. That's actually going to pay dividends that they weren't, but they still played way more than they should have, right? The fact that you got more reps for Enoetta, Ika Wana, and Trey Pierce is huge. Then becomes the question, can Trey Williams and Damon Payne, can those guys be what we think they can be that they weren't at their previous schools? And I think that makes everything interesting. And I'm not mentioning Rayshawn because he's kind of the constant. But just by virtue of just being able to rotate these guys in, keep them fresh, because last year that was a problem, but you still got very important experience for a lot of those other guys as a result of like, we got to take out those 2 really good players here and there. We just have to. I think like that ended up paying some dividends more for this year. And we saw against Alabama that like, yeah, that front can still just absolutely dominate. That was not like a slouch of an offensive line. And it wasn't like they were missing a bunch of guys. And the line just dominated up front. Absolutely dominated. And just think about the fact that you had 2 more guys. You're going to see the same guys and plus 2 more who theoretically should be really good. So I think it starts there. And then, same thing, you go back to the linebackers and it's like, those guys started slow in general. You had Jay Sean, who was just like too freakishly athletic and just ran himself out of plays until later in the year. Now he knows what to do. So it doesn't need to be yelled at as much. More so that like the question ends up being the boundary secondary, like, is that going to be deep enough to be able to carry them? But the good news is you can see a synergy that could happen where the front should dominate enough where the secondary, you might have a little bit of ability to kind of ease in and find its depth as it goes on. But yeah, man, like I think this defense is probably top 3 in the country and is probably not 3.
That would give them a chance to, accomplish pretty much all their goals. Maybe short of winning a national championship, you probably need a little bit more out of the offense, but you could pretty much do everything else, Isaiah, if you have a defense that's top 3 in the country. I think it's a bold. I respect you for the take on the defensive tackles being better. I wouldn't go there yet. I think it's possible, but not probable with just the talent they lost. I mean, the way that those guys.
The ceiling isn't as high. Keep in mind, like that's how you have to look at it. The ceiling is not. It's not as high, but the floor is raised. You're right. So that's where it ends up being kind of that same thing. Like it's not that like they're going to be better, but in the aggregate, it could be just as good. And I think it will be essentially just as good also because of the guys behind them, right? Like it's going to be a hard defense to test because you can't, even if like, say there's a bust in the very front, you still got those linebackers who should be a lot better. And that's also a deeper room too. And, the starting corners and safeties should be good. I mean, safety's deep, but corner isn't. They should be good enough to like challenge on the back end most of the time. That's why it's not like it's not a situation where it's like, well, they'll be as good as Kenneth and Mason, but it's kind of like fresher legs, very good, knows their assignments a little bit better. I think like the floor gets raised.
And to that point, you're right. The Ikawuna snaps are going to be better because he's better. The Anoeta snaps are going to be better because he's a year older. Trey Pierce, same thing. Because those guys did play to your original point. So I think that's kind of it for the scrimmage. Anything else, scrimmage, fall camp, before we get to some questions here that you had that we didn't touch on?
Bryce Underwood's arm fell off in the scrimmage, so he is going to be full-time left-handed now.
And as Giovanni El-Hadi said last week, he can throw just as well with his left hand as his right hand, which it's an exaggeration. It's just the way people talk. But then I think I texted you after he said that and said, well, maybe Bryce just sucks because like there's just no way. Obviously, it's not true, but apparently he can throw 40 to 50 yards on target with his left hand, which is crazy.
That's what the rival fans were coming out and being like,
of course.
They're like, oh, that doesn't sound good. Like, you think Giovanni El-Hadi was saying it, like, what surprised you about Bryce? And he's like, actually, he sucks. That's what surprises me. You think that's the context. Be better trolls, Ohio State fans. Be better trolls.
They should be. They're very good at it. They're solid at it. Okay, let's move on. Take your questions. Again, reminder, leave your questions in the live chat here if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up if you're watching there. Would love to see 300 likes on this video. If you want to skip yourself to the front of the line, just use the super chat feature. We will get to it as soon as possible. We also will take questions from our message board over at thewolverine.com. But before we do, we got to talk about Homefield, which is the premium college athletics gear all over homefieldapparel.com. They are based in Indianapolis. And as we said at the top, 19 days until the college football season. That is more than enough time to get an order in over at Homefield. That's homefieldapparel.com and receive it before the season opener on August 30th. You're going to want to have all the coolest gear. They just came out with their Can't Miss Kickoff box launch for Michigan, which is on the screen there. If you're watching on YouTube, you got the crew neck sweatshirt, t-shirt, hat, socks, and more. It is awesome. I believe one of those is on its way to me, which I'm very excited for. I have a ton of Homefield gear. It is not only great designs, but super, super comfortable. Isaiah, I know you're a big Homefield fan as well. I got my bomber jacket, and it's almost bomber jacket season. Maybe give it a month and a half, but I'm excited to wear that around Ann Arbor here. So head to homefieldapparel.com and get your order in now. They got Michigan gear, but they've also got a bunch of other schools as well. Dozens and dozens of schools you can choose from. So gear up for the college football season at homefieldapparel.com. How about that for an ad? I know you got Homefield too, right? Is it? Oh, are you wearing it? Let's go.
Yeah, I'm making you. I'm helping. No,
He's wearing
they're
his
a
Homefield
sponsor
right
for
now.
me too. But I've also spent an exorbitant amount of money at Homefield. And then for some reason, I
It's
made
hard.
this room a little too dark, so it's kind of hard to see. But yeah, it's the national championship. It's the coolest jacket ever.
That is awesome. That is cooler than the bomber jacket I got. But yeah, if you want to get that Isaiah has, homefieldapparel.com. Okay, we do have a question. I want to start with a question that we had from Corey G, who is one of our top viewers and listeners. He says, Clayton and Isaiah, do you see Marlon Klein stepping up this year? I do. You hear good things. Guys are really talking about the way he's leading and the way he's playing in practice. It's not going to be Loveland, but he could be very good. And they're going to need him to step up early because Hogan Hansen might not be back right away.
Well, he went into the, as I sent you the video, the jungle. So that's interesting. I don't think you watched when I sent that to you.
I may or may not have watched that video.
Oh man, you're missing out on quality content. You didn't watch the Joe Milton thing either. But the jungle, right? Like, I think like that's interesting, right? Like this break him down to build him back up type of thing. Because I think like he kind of needed that, because for all of this talk for like since he's been around of like he's the most athletic tight end, he's the fastest tight end, and then like there was like just kind of felt like the routine for Colston was like impossible sometimes for Marlon. So I think he'll be better because of that. Now, he's kind of one of those, like, I want to see it before I kind of really get there type of players, because it was just, I was disappointed in what he did last year in terms of the passing game. I thought he was great blocking, but like, I think in the passing game, I just want to see the hands. I want to see like the ability to track the ball. I think having a better quarterback situation is going to help him out a lot.
Huge.
But, like that, but still, like Colston found ways to make it happen. This is still going to be a very tight end friendly offense. Chip Lindsey still has really heavily used the tight end like throughout his career. But I think if not him, I think like you're going to see way more Max Bredesen, Jalen Hoffman. Like the fullbacks are going to be, I think, going out for passes a lot. I mean, you saw it in the spring game. Less Max Bredesen in the spring game because like they know what he can do, whatever. Mm-hmm. But he still was split out and actually going for passes, where like last year it felt like he was split out and it was just kind of a quick decoy. So I think that'll help Marlon as well, just because I just think that there's going to be more options generally.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's hard to pinpoint whether the problem, the problem was the quarterback. So how much of the problem was the receiving core last year? The only thing that was for sure is that Colston Loveland was just on another level because he was moving different than everyone else out there. He was productive, had really good numbers, even in, he missed 2-3 games. And, with a team that didn't have good quarterback play or anywhere near good quarterback play, he still had a great year and got picked number 10 overall in the NFL draft at that position. It's really tough to do. So, you don't blame Marlon Klein for not having a great season last year, but if you're going to be that elite tight end, you're going to be able to produce regardless. Now, he didn't get those opportunities, so I'm not blaming him.
No, I blame him. I blame him for most of the offensive problems last year, actually.
Yeah, it falls on him. The buck stops.
That's because I was hyping him up so hard last year, as you remember. Like you teased me at one point because it's like every question out of your mouth is about Marlon Klein.
I do remember that. You were sick. You said you weren't going to ask any questions because you had no voice, and then it was like second question of the press conference. You're asking about Marlon Klein, but anyway.
Funny thing is that was to Wink too. I'm like, how much does Marlon Klein really stretch your defense?
He challenges him daily. Michael Ivor did skip himself to the front of the line using the super chat feature. You can do that too if you want to. Ben Hall, why transfer is what he's asking. That's former Michigan running back Ben Hall, who was here in the spring, left in the spring portal, headed to North Carolina. Is that right? I think he saw the writing on the wall, right? Last year at the end of the season when Kalel and Donovan were no longer there, Kalel was hurt, Donovan didn't play in the bowl game. He had his opportunities, but Jordan Marshall was clearly the better back. He got the start against Alabama. And then you brought in Justice Haynes, and, at best you were competing for the third running back job. And I think that he wanted more opportunity. It's one of those positions where you generally have one guy on the field, and you use two when they're healthy, and he wasn't going to be in that too, I think.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. That's accurate.
Yeah, that's kind of a backtracking there, but appreciate the question. Let's move to the Wolverine.com message board for the moment. Still taking questions on YouTube. D Walto 3 says, hope you are both well. Let's use 9-3 as a benchmark for the season. What things go right for the team to exceed 9 wins, and what doesn't go right if the total is going to be 8 wins or less? This is a good question, kind of playing out the season in our heads 19 days before it even begins. What say you on what needs to go right for them to get 10 or more?
They have to be a good road team. I think it's that simple. These teams that are on the schedule, now they're allowed to improve as well. I don't know how much like Oklahoma or Nebraska are going to be like. I know some look at Oklahoma as maybe a dark horse, but it's obviously it's John Mateer bringing in his coordinator. We talk about how like, okay, how did he do against Power 4 teams? Not great. When he was at Washington State, but like it's all about the road. If this is like Lloyd Carr, Rich Rod, Brady Hoke, first half of Jim Harbaugh, it won't be a good year because those teams just could not go and win on the road. I mean, second half Lloyd Carr, right? Mm-hmm. But like the last 3 years, I mean, I know it didn't start out well last year with losses at Washington and Illinois, but obviously beating Ohio State on the road was huge. If they're a road team, then I think the season will go great. Can they pack the defense and do enough offensively? If they aren't, then it's going to be a bad year. And here's the thing. They can split, right? Like they could win at Oklahoma and lose at Nebraska, vice versa. They could beat both of those teams, then lose to USC. I mean, the calculus of college football to being a success is a little bit different than it used to be. I think they'll probably be a lot better at home. I mean, they've tended to be very good at home, minus 2020 and last year. Obviously, they had the losses to Texas and Oregon, but I think that it's hard to play on the road. It's hard to go cross country in the middle of the season especially without the protection of like the bye week. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't get a bye before or after USC. So if they can be a good road team, then they'll be, I think, 10-2. I don't know even who the 2 losses are. I'm not picking them to lose to Ohio State until Ohio State's shown that they know how to beat Michigan. But outside of that, like I don't know, there really is not a surefire loss on this schedule. There's no team that you can look at and say that is a loss. Weirdly, a lot of the national media say, well, Oklahoma, that's a loss. And we talked about that already. There's no team on there that it's like, oh man, Nebraska. Yeah, they can't go and beat Nebraska on the road. Says who? Right. What's Nebraska done that's really told you that they are a powerhouse? Michigan is coming off of an 8-5 season without a quarterback. And essentially, anything that's changed minus the 2 defensive tackles, because like they essentially and Colston Loveland, but they essentially played without Will Johnson for the majority of the year. They got better everywhere. Outside of those 2 things.
For me, it's got to be Bryce Underwood's very good, and I think he will be. Part of it depends on when he becomes very good or good. I guess maybe I'll say just good because you bring up the point that, and every time you hear it, you think how remarkable it is that they went 8-5 with real no quarterback, not really much of an offense. A couple of those games, you were literally just setting yourself up to punt, and then play defense and try to go about it that way. So if he's good, but I think the offensive line has to be better than serviceable to win 10 games, take a big step forward from what it was last season. And it will help that you'll be less one-dimensional because that offensive line was facing a lot of run blitzes because everyone knew they were going to run. And then when it got to 3rd and long, that was the only time they were going to pass. So they were predictable. I remember one game charting at the first down plays. It was like like 95% run on first down. You just knew what they were going to do at all times because they didn't have much in their arsenal. So that'll help the offensive line out, being a little bit more unpredictable. And the defense has to be as good as we think it can be, to your point about packing the defense and winning on the road. I think you're spot on when you come to that. If you go under 9 wins, I mean, it probably means there's some health involved there. Maybe not. Maybe if you go 8-4, stay healthy, but it just didn't click early in the year. The Sherrone Moore suspension, maybe you lose a game there. I know that we had some questions about that as well. So yeah, I think that you're looking at an offense that still really struggles, especially early in the year. You stack a couple losses, you go 8-4. That's kind of how it happens. To me, I look at the offense on both sides of it. Whether the O-line and quarterback improve, could get 10. If they don't, especially O-line, receiving core doesn't step up, you have an injury maybe, then you're winning 8, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be like, I don't think Bryce even needs to be like very great. Like I've said before, he just needs to be Cade McNamara, 2021. Efficient, doesn't turn the ball over a ton. That's it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think he needs to be what he'll eventually be. And I don't think he needs to be what he probably is capable of right now. Right? They just need him to make smart decisions. Ease him in. Just let him be a guy. And I think they'll be fine offensively.
Mm-hmm. You got to protect him. We're going to go a little faster here because Isaiah does have a chicken on the smoker, not even the grill. I misspoke earlier. So we got to get him out of here, and we appreciate his time, him jumping on with us. DJ Wolverine says, with Rod Moore, TJ Metcalf, Brandon Hillman, Mason Curtis, Jaden Mangum, Kanoa Winston, Elijah Dotson, and Jordan Young, as a whole, is this the most talented / deepest safety room that Michigan has had since you've covered them, perhaps in your lifetime? I think deepest for sure, for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it'll be interesting if Rod Moore comes back, because it's just like, what do you do? Like, I think, and it sounds like he will, even though he's still very limited. What do you do? Because like, as Lamar Morgan mentioned, like Jaden Mangum was like all Big Ten caliber when he was at MSU. Brandon Hillman has the look of a dude that you're going to be like talking about for a decade after, right? If he lives up to his potential. They love Mason Curtis. TJ Metcalf, a name everybody knows, told me he's the guy to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's just incredibly deep. I think the as long as they are smart about it, because like what only thing that kind of worries me is that like they have kind of some of the similar issues they had defensively last year, where ultimately it was solved by moving Zeke Berry to the outside and Makari Page to nickel. That I hope that they don't have to learn those types of lessons later in the year of like, this is the best place for everybody. That's, I think, the only thing that holds it back. But yeah, I think it's on paper at this moment. Yeah, it's the deepest that I've covered in 11 years.
And maybe those moves are made quicker this year, because it feels like in the preseason, at least, guys aren't as cemented in at spots and they're kind of moving around. That scares me a little bit though, too, because you'd like to, have them get comfortable and build that chemistry on the back end. But it seems like playing multiple positions helped Zeke Berry last year. He said when he was at outside corner, he knew where his help was coming from because he had played safety early in his career, nickel earlier that season. So it can also benefit. It goes both ways. P. Maximus says, is Jimmy Rolder our backup linebacker? He seems he seems suspect in pass coverage. I think we all kind of think of when he came in 2023, Ohio State, they immediately ran a pass right up the seam on him. I don't know. I haven't seen enough to say he's suspect as a coverage guy at linebacker. But he is their backup linebacker. They consider the third starter, they say, next to Jayshon Barham and Ernest Hausman. We'll move on from that. I find this one interesting. This is from Jim Rome Stinks, one of our fantastic subscribers over at the Wolverine. He says, rank the position groups in order of least concern to most concern. For the sake of time, I'm curious from you, just what's your top position group? What is the number one position group on this team? And what is the one you're most concerned about?
Top position group would be probably defensive line. I'll just do the whole thing. I would key on the tackles. I think that's my top position group. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you could take the the tackles, the edges, or even the linebackers, and they're all kind of right there for me. And the safety, man, it's just the defense is so deep, it's insane.
If you separate safety from the rest of the defensive backfield, that's got to be right there for me too. I know we just talked about it, but D-line I think is my top group.
It's what I'm most concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
I that's hard because it's like I don't feel like as bad, but it's still like even though stock is up, it's still wide receiver because we have to see it. Stop telling us because like that. I think that's the problem is like they spent a lot of time last year being like, what if we're better? What if we're more explosive? What if the offense is like that? And you sit there and you're like, man, I didn't think of that. It seems on paper like it's not, but they're telling us that it might be not just as good as like Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson, but they're like saying it might be better, huh? But then you see it and you're like, but it's just not though. In the way as you would say it, it's just not though. So wide receiver would be it. Offensive line, but not for the same reasons that everyone else thinks. It's just more of like looking player to player. Is Evan Link as good as Miles Hinton was last year? I don't know. It can Giovanni Al-Hadi actually be what they say he is, type of thing. So those two position groups, I'm still very curious about.
Me too. I would go with offensive line just because of the importance of it. I mean, literally 5 out of your 11 players in a given time, and we know Michigan runs the heavy packages. Sometimes more than half the players on the field for you are offensive linemen, and everyone on the entire team relies on the offensive line. It's the only position group that can say that. The defense likes the long breaks because the offensive line can, pave the way in the run game and create long drives, things like that. Everyone relies on that group, and they have to step up this season. You're not going on the road if that offensive line isn't poised, cool, calm, and collected, and physical at the point of attack. They're not winning at Oklahoma if they don't mesh early in the season. So I'm going to go O-line for some of the reasons you mentioned there. Let's see if we have any more because I know Isaiah has to get going here. Let's see. What's up with both Michigan winning natties back-to-back, both teams losing so much, yet Michigan Wolverines start 9th place in 2024 and Ohio State starts 3rd. Oh, he's comparing last year's AP poll to this year's AP poll. Oh, Michigan lost more. They lost their head coach, for one. He's talking about Ohio State.
I mean, outside, I wouldn't say technically outside of losing the head coach, they didn't really lose more. Ohio State had 1 more player drafted, or was it 2 more players drafted?
Yeah, but
I think it's just too. I just think it's Ohio State they've been incredible since like 1960, with like maybe a down year here and there, but like otherwise, like they've been like the cream of the crop generally. Like even on a year last year, they're 4th in the conference and still win the national championship. So like and they've recruited incredible, so they get a lot of benefit of the doubt. But I'm with you in terms of like, I don't think they're the 3rd best team in the country. I mean, I might be wrong, and we can find out like, man, I'm completely wrong. But like Julian saying in Lincoln keynotes don't sound like they're lighting it up in fall camp. Like they've replaced both coordinators. 2 coordinators, that's not the same as Michigan, right? Like Michigan upgraded at coordinator. Ohio State would have preferred to have kept Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly, right? Like they would have preferred that. I know that their fans kind of turned on Knowles because of him going to in conference, but like, don't let them fool you. Like they'd prefer to keep him.
That defense was ridiculous last year.
Yeah, like, and you just look across the board, and they're like, I just did this whole stock up thing for Michigan, and it's like there's really like one position group, tight end, that is theoretically not as good. I mean, you can say defensive tackle if you want. I disagree, but other than that, like it's even or better across the board, right? So Ohio State is worse across the board, right? They're worse at both coordinator positions than they were before, until proven otherwise. They're worse at quarterback. They're at best even at wide receiver, but we don't know that Carnell Tate's as good as Emeka Ibuka was. Most like prolific wide receiver in Ohio State history, if I'm not mistaken. They're worse at running back. They're worse on offensive line. They're worse at defense across the entirety of the defensive line. Maybe even at linebacker, even at safety, at least because of Caleb Downs, and even at even or worse at cornerback, depending on how Davison Igbinosun does. So, yeah, I don't think they're the number 3 team in the country. They're just kind of going off of name recognition, which I think they deserve because they're the only team in college football that hasn't had like more than like a down season or two in like the last 60 years.
Yeah. It's a safe bet to put them at the very least in the top 10. It would almost feel weird if they were in the back half of the top 10, even though they lost everything that they did. The good thing is it doesn't really matter. Michigan started 9 last year. They end up in the receiving votes category after the bowl game. Ohio State starts 3. We'll see how they finish, right? Even how you finish the regular season could be a lot different than how you finish the entire season. We saw that play out in the playoff last season. So it doesn't matter that Michigan starts 14th. In both polls, they can move up. It's all about how the playoff committee sees it. There's a long way to go, but it is fun to see the number next to the team and know that college football is coming. Isaiah Hole from Wolverines Wire, thank you so much for joining us. Check out his work over at wolverineswire.com and the Locked On Wolverines podcast. Like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Head to thewolverine.com. We have the best deal in America. Someone brought that up in the chat. Use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. And we will see everyone next time.